Okay, so number one, Michael Saunderson has said, have we seen the bottom of the S&P?
Well, I mean, I'm sure he's asking it a bit tongue-in-cheek, but as my father told me a very long time ago, no one calls the bottom, no one calls the top. I think how I would phrase it is, if you're a medium to long-term investor, we've had a big pullback in the market. That's never a silly time to invest into an asset class like shares or big licks like Argo, tremendous long-term track records investing in sort of generic stock markets. Whether we've seen the bottom or not, I don't know, and I think it will come very much down to that inflation interest rates dynamic. If I had to make a bet, and I'm not positioning a portfolio like this, but if I had to make a bet, I'd say no.
Okay. Simon Cohen, please send me a scone. I'll see if there's any left. Thomas Warwick has said, I'm a shareholder looking to reinvest. Excellent. We'd love to have you back. John Thompson, previous investor updates have referred to VSL giving shareholders the option of cashing out at NTA if certain performance thresholds are not met by 2023. How likely is that option that it will be triggered, VSL, and what impact would it have on the NTA?
So the VSL, and I'll try not to waffle on for too long, but VSL is a really important investment for GVF at the moment. It's one of our largest positions. It's one we've been engaged with over a number of years. And back in 2020, we had a similar sort of campaign as this, where we didn't think the board and the manager were doing the right thing by shareholders. We rallied a lot of other shareholders around. There was a strong consensus. This was not just us making trouble. It was genuinely a problem that we saw. And that ultimately ended up with the chairman and another director leaving the board and a bunch of commitments being made by the company. I think the one that John's referring to is next year, the company has to redeem a quarter of its assets at NAV, and that's in place. So that is definitely going to happen. I think it's about 6 or 7% of GVF. So we'll sell probably 30 to 40% of our holding, maybe 20% higher than the current share price. We continue to think there's some serious challenges at the company. So we've been doing a lot of work there. And I guess I'd just say that we actually hope that we might achieve a better outcome than what I've just talked about. But as a baseline, there's a large return of capital, 20% above the share price today.
Okay, excellent. Michael Kent, in terms of shareholder returns, is there any thought to shift the balance even slightly away from dividends income to growth in the NTA so shareholders might see a little bit more capital growth?
So this is one of those really hard questions. And sort of you ask one shareholder, you get one view, you ask another shareholder, you get another view. So I'd ask all of you to please send, to me and the rest of the directors up. I guess, and Michael's a great supporter of us. I think he's been with us from IPO, and I totally empathise with where you're coming from, Michael. I guess there's two schools of thought. One is that we pay out a very high yield. I think we're paying out one of the highest yields in the market.
Yeah.
And that creates this sort of self-perpetuating goodwill cycle in the sense the share price seems to do very well. You pay a high yield, the share price behaves very well, and shareholders are happy if the share price is up. So, that's not a bad way to go. I guess the caveat to that is it also means the NTA never grows a lot because we pay everything out again. We listed at $1. The NTA today is $1.17-ish. And, we've made a hell of a lot more than 17%. We've just given it all back to shareholders. So there are certainly some shareholders that would like to see the dividend stay in the company, get reinvested and compounded. The best way we've found to sort of marry that tension on the register is really to promote the dividend reinvestment plan that we did a lot of work on. So if you'd like to reinvest your dividends, you certainly just have to tick a box or email Emma and they will get reinvested for you. I mean, I think the best solution is really one that I've probably spoken about to Michael, which is perhaps, and this is not my view, we've got a full board of 4, but perhaps dividends grow slightly slower than the growth in NTA over time. Maybe the yield could come back a little bit without actually having to cut the dividend. So hopefully, as the NTA goes up, maybe the dividend grows a little bit slower. That might be a halfway house, but it's certainly something that I know on the board we don't have a perfect answer to.
And of course, franking credits are trapped if we don't pay a dividend.
And franking credits are definitely trapped if we don't pay a dividend. So it's something Chris always reminds us about. So it's an important issue about it. No one wants stranded franking credits.
I think also we're currently paying 9.4 cents per annum, which is really high. And heads up, a Bell's report is going to be coming out listing, I think, the top 20 LICs in terms of their trading capacity and keeping, at parity. And we're in that group, punching far above our weights alongside names like Argo AFIC, exactly. So I do think that the yield is super important, but 9.4 cents is a lot, especially in this environment. Okay. Bill Blomfield said, welcome back to Australia. Thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
John Nichols, there was made about a rights issue, SPP, down the track last year at Canberra. Any progress or thoughts?
Well, I mean, so we're definitely on record saying we'd like to continue to grow the vehicle, but not by a lot. I mean, Emma's said consistently, I think 300 is the max we'd want GVF to get to in size, and we're 200 and a bit now, I think. But we're in no rush. And if there's a window where we can raise money, we certainly will.
Yeah.
I think recently we've been sort of bouncing at a small discount to a small premium. And I think, we probably want to see a consistent small premium before we came back to the market. And as always, if we don't see a window to raise money, it's not the end of the world. We won't raise money. But I know it's lovely to hear that some shareholders would like us to do that.
And that was it from online. Does anyone have a question in the room? Please.
I'm running a bit late, but I think there was a big increase in New Zealand banks' interest rates. Wondering, because it's all topical, whether you've got any thoughts on that.
So the question, I'm sorry, I know you've come a lot, I've forgotten your name.
William.
William's question was, we've just seen a big hike in the New Zealand central bank's interest rates, a 75 basis point hike, the largest one they've ever done. And, do we have a view on that? And how does that fit into what we've been talking about earlier on inflation? And I think it comes into the theme. So, I mean, the US Federal Reserve, to their credit, is always generally early. So they've been hiking rates very quickly. They saw this problem probably a little bit quicker than some of the other central banks around the world. Maybe you can remember the speed of the interest rate hikes in the US. A number of the other wealthy central banks globally are maybe a step or two behind. So I'd say New Zealand is in that camp, the ECB is in that camp, and they're catching up to the Fed in how quickly they're raising rates. The debate in the US now is whether they slow the pace. So they've been raising it at 75 basis points a meeting, and the big debate that everyone's agonizing about is, does that fall to 50 or does it stay at 75? I think in the case of New Zealand, there's an element of just a little bit of catch up to where everyone else is. But it's tough. I mean, I certainly don't have a crystal ball. I don't envy the job of central bankers. I feel often they're a bit like directors. You do a huge amount of work and often don't get much thanks for it. But it's very hard. There's a lot of data coming in. The data is high frequency. It's not, there's not a lot of clarity about how much weight you should put on it. And I think everyone's just trying to steer the ship around inflation as best they can.
Pleasure.
Hi.
The franking credit count at the moment, what 20 cents per shares at the moment?
Yes, so we've got 8 cents of
Can
franking.
you just repeat the question for
The question was, can we have an update on the franking within the company? Just a reminder, we have control over building the profit reserve, as you know, and we've got 24 cents there. With the franking, because we are we invest internationally, the only franking we get is from the tax that we pay, or occasionally if we have an Australian investment. And we have 8 cents at the moment, which means that we could cover the next year and a half. But as I said, hopefully, Miles, we've started FY 2023 off well. Obviously, if we do well, we'll pay more tax and we can get some more franking. But yes, it is something that we can't control. What we have gone on record and said is that in the event that we ran out of franking for whatever reason, we would look to increase the dividend and use more of the profits reserve to ensure that we kind of stuck to that 9 cents annual dividend, if that makes sense.
It's always a really weird dynamic. So whenever we pay tax, Emma's like punching the air going, yes, franking credits. And I'm there going, I can't believe we're paying taxes.
Taxes are good.
I got the impression that you were getting a winding back that dividend. Can you give me an argument why you wouldn't want to get franking credits out the door as soon as possible?
No, absolutely. So I'd say the risk of us ever leaving stranded franking credits are de minimis, especially with Chris and Jonathan on the board. And just to put them in perspective, so we have 23 cents of profit reserve. 24, and only 8 cents of franking. So we're going to run out of franking much faster than we run out of dividends. That's always the issue for us, or has always been the issue for us, is finding enough franking to fully frank the dividend. So we'd never let franking disappear. And occasionally we'll do, we're focused on that as
In the past, we have paid a lesson.
No questions? No?
Wow, that's great. Everyone's happy. We should move to scones and canapes.
All right. Thank you very
Sorry
much.
for the
Thank you
online.
Thank you very much for making the time.
Thank you.